Greetings and welcome to a Warhammer Underworlds review. Today I'm going to review the new Warband expansion for Warhammer Underworlds Harrowdeep, Blackpowders Buccaneers. But before we get into things, I'd just like to thank Games Workshop for providing this to review for free, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do a review, and thank you for them sending out early, so it's allowed me to do more content, which you guys will see soon. But once again, yeah, thank you to Games Workshop. But as always, I still try to be honest, impartial, and constructively critical. And before we start the video, please remember to like and subscribe, as well as comment about what you thought of the video and the Warband. Whether you'd like to see more Warhammer Underworlds content and stuff, just let me know down below. So yeah, today I'm back to Warhammer Underworlds. It's been like 2 months since I last talked about the game. I mean, there's not much to be important about. There's not much that you could have talked about anyway. But today I'm going over this new warband, which is the third warband for Harrowdeep, with one more being left, which is, spoilers, going to be Necromancer and Zombie warband. But yeah, today we're going over Blackpowders Buccaneers. So this is a destruction warband for, well, Warhammer Underworlds. So I'll be going through my standard format for Warhammer Underworlds. The only thing is, I won't really cover decks, because if you didn't know, I don't really play the game anymore. I only play it casually with friends and very rarely. So I'm more of a casual player now. And if you're going to play casually, Rivals is still a good format. And, you know, Championship is just too much of a mess for me to enter right now. So I think it would be more hurtful for me to make a deck for Championship. But we'll go through the warband and yeah, let's get going. For the narrative, Blackpowders Buccaneers are a roving band of pirates stalking the seas of Uglu for treasure and action. During a terrible storm, they were washed deep below the ocean, and instead of dying, somehow ended up in Harrowdeep. Within there, they found bountiful treasures to seek and loot, as well as challenges to face, while Blackpowder himself went with much chagrin and energy into attacking these new foes and defeating them. The rest of his crew managed to steal and loot everything they could see and find. As they venture on, how much loot will they find, and who will be able to finally put them to an end? For the miniatures, warband, just 5 models. You've got an ogre, who's a pirate, but doesn't have a hat. Then you've got 2 noblars, a monkey with a knife, and then a giant parrot. So as a 5-fighter warband, they're kind of, you know, middle of the ground. They can't fully hide away from the opponent like you can with a 4 3-fighter warband, but they don't spread out too much like a 6 or 7-fighter warband. With 5 fighters, you know, you're generally going to have 1 fighter exposed, but thankfully you can put Buccaneer himself quite far forward because of his 6 wounds. Visually, it's okay. I'm not a fan of this warband visually. Like, the Noblars are pretty cool. Noblars have a lot of character, like the guy with the grappling hook as well as the peg leg. My problem with Buccaneer is, while he has a Cadron Overlord gun, which looks pretty cool, doesn't have a hat. You know, he's a pirate. You know, if you're not going to go with the hat, he needs an eye patch or a peg leg. And you can say, like, oh, John, that's just being a stereotypical pirate. And it's like, he's got a giant parrot and a monkey with a knife. Why not just give him a hat or an eye patch or a peg leg? He just kind of boring. He's just a guy with a big sword and a gun, you know. He doesn't look too much of a pirate, even though he has the pirate theme. So, yeah. And the monkey with a knife is just... feels like they're trying to go with, like, what they struck with Diachasm, where you had, the crab doing claw. So they're like, oh, we got a giant crab, now we've got a monkey with a knife. But it's just a monkey with a knife. At least doing claw kind of looked like a Warhammer crab. It was big. 1 big claw, 1 small claw, and it was a crab. And then you got the parrot, it's just a giant parrot on a skull. It's okay. As I said, like, nothing... It's not like an ugly warband. It still looks nice. It's just kind of bland, oddly. As for the miniatures themselves, they come on a dark grey sprue, which was odd. Thought they were going to go something more blue or even black for pirates, but they're dark grey, which is fine. Going together, I find the little guys go together really well, like the Noblars, and the monkey and the parrot, or like 3 pieces, which is really nice, go together fairly simply. My problem with Buccaneer is, with Warhammer Underworlds, Games Workshop push how far they can make push fit miniatures, and it's just, he goes together, but it almost feels like he needs the pegs, but if you cut off the pegs, he might go together a little bit better, just because even when I built mine, despite using super thin glue, making sure I'd filed down the pegs and put them in, he still didn't fit together correctly, because this miniature is designed to be played without being built, glued together. So he kind of slots in kind of like the way I describe it as a piano key. It goes from one end to the other, because then it all slots into the base. So it's not hard to build, it's just a bit awkward. But overall, it's easy, nothing too difficult. As I said, it's push fit, so it's just all fine. Now we come to the fighter cards, where I'll go over each fighter individually and explain what they do, as well as rating them, their strengths and weaknesses as I go over them. So first up, we have Gorlock Blackpowder, who I'm not going to go back and edit calling Buccaneer. He's a brawler, whatever a brawler is, and he's also from Destruction. As I should have mentioned earlier, this is a Destruction warband, for those who care. He's your leader. He's got a movement characteristic 3. He defends on 1 block, and he's got 6 wounds. He has a Grundabus, which is range 3, 3 fury, 2 damage with ammo. And ammo is, this fighter cannot make this attack action unless you first discard 1 swag counter, swag for life. At the start of the game, gain 1 swag counter. So what's swag counters? Well, they've put in a counter mechanic for this warband, but it basically is just, counter mechanics. Then he's got a Great Cutlass, which is range 2, which is really nice. 2 smash, 3 damage. And then he inspires by discarding your second or subsequent swag counter. Now, the most annoying thing here is he has no ways by himself to generate swag counters, which probably ties into the warband, as we get to in a minute. But he's okay. Yeah, I like his range. That's Cutlass's range 2. That's pretty good. Gun seems fine, although the ammo restriction is really tough. But, it's not too bad. When Blackpowder is inspired, he has a movement characteristic of 4. That's the only real change to his stats. His Grundabus goes up to 4 fury and gains a new ammo effect. Still cannot be shot unless you discard 1 or 2 swag counters. If you discard 2 swag counters, this attack has ensnare. I mean, for 2 swag counters, you should have just given it cleave as well, but whatever. Still nice being 4 fury, so you probably won't discard 2 swag counters because 4 fury with 2 damage is accurate enough. And his Great Cutlass is unchanged. So he's alright, a decent brawler. I'd say Hrothgorn is better than him, but Hrothgorn is more broken. He's the other ogre in Warhammer Underworlds. But he's fine. Next we have Kagi. Kagi is a Noblar and a minion, and he can fly. I guess because of his grappling hook. I mean, there are questions as to what happens if he's fighting in a place where his rope can't connect, but we'll ignore that because he has a nice goatee. So he's movement 3, 1 dodge, 2 wounds. He has a grapnel, which is range 3, 2 fury, 1 damage within the snare. And this fighter inspires when they make a light-fingered reaction. Light-fingered is a reaction. After this fighter's successful attack action, that targets an adjacent fighter. Pick one of the target's upgrades and break that card. So if you're not aware, breaking is discarding it. When you break that card, gain 1 swag counter. So effectively, this is the way the warband generates swag counters without needing to rely on cards. So it's okay. The only problem is his attack action is pretty terrible. But the cool thing about Light Fingered is it doesn't lock itself into a named attack action. So if you gave this Noblar a free smash 2 damage sword, you could trigger Light Fingered. So it's actually not too bad if you invest into it. Although if you want to on Kagi, is up to you. Kagi inspired. goes to movement 4 with 2 dodge, and his grapnel goes to 3 fury. Otherwise, he remains unchanged. His ability doesn't change. So he's kind of neat. I do like that he has fly, but with 2 wounds and 1 dodge starting off, he's a bit dubious for his durability. Next, we have Pegs, who's a Nobbler and a minion. 3 movement, 1 dodge, 2 wounds. Has a Scavenged Blade, which is range 1, 2 fury, 1 damage, and the same light-fingered rule as, what's his name? KG. So just make sure you don't get Pegs. Fine, I guess. Pegs Inspired goes to movement 4 with 2 dodge, and his Scavenged Blade goes to 3 fury. Outside of that, pretty much unchanged. Kinda terrible. Obviously, KG is the better one because he has a grapnel, but you know, Pegs exists, so there's that. Next, you have Mange, who's a companion. He has movement 4, 2 dodge, 2 wounds. He has a Pilfered Dagger, which is range 1, 3 fury, 1 damage with Grievous. So he has about, hold on, let me calculate this. So he has a 30.6% chance to roll a crit and effectively do 2 damage. He has the same Inspire condition, so if he makes a light-fingered reaction, and then his other reaction is after a friendly minion makes a move action, push this fighter up to 3 hexes. After this push, this fighter must be within 2 hexes of that minion. So it already is kind of a buff piece, well, supporting piece for other minions. My only criticism, as I kind of talked about in the visual stuff of it, is just a monkey. Like, it's just a monkey. Mange Inspired goes up to movement 5 with 3 dodge, and his Pilfered Dagger gains Ensnare, which is nice. Other than that, remains completely unchanged, so becomes faster, more survivable with 3 dodge. And, you know, actually, he's quite reliable in terms of triggering light-fingered just because of having a base 3 fury attack. It's actually oddly one of your better combat pieces, just that it probably explode when hit. Finally, we have Shriek, which is a companion, a beast, and can fly, so it can't hold objectives or be given attack action upgrades. Oddly, the monkey can, so you can give the monkey a giant blade or gun. So, but it's movement 5, 2 dodge with 2 wounds, has Cruel Talons, which are 3 fury, range 1, 1 damage with Grievous. So obviously Grievous is if you roll a crit, can do 1 extra damage. And it also inspires off making a light-fingered reaction, which it has, seen Peg's card. And if this fighter was within 2 hexes of a friendly Blackpowder, that Blackpowder is supporting this fighter. And reaction, after a friendly Blackpowder makes a move action, push this fighter up to 3 hexes, and it must end within 2 hexes of that Blackpowder. But the cool thing is, once again, because it can actually be supported by Blackpowder from afar, Shriek becomes really reliable, especially for inspiring. So, drawback is it can't be given any attack action upgrades, but it's actually quite fast and durable. Well, not durable, but damaging. So, yeah, pretty good. Shriek Inspired just goes to 3 dodge, and it gains Stagger on its Cruel Talons. Otherwise, unchanged. You know, it's actually probably going to inspire to this, so it's not bad, you know, charging Shriek first if you can get Buccaneer into position to support. Because it should do actually really well, because with that supporting from Buccaneer, effectively counters hitting on free smash. But the other thing is also counters support for defense, so it becomes really durable. It's actually a nice, you know, nice piece to run disruptively into the opponent, because either you charge in and inspire, and then they have to deal with this annoying bird. But if you like sitting on an objective, if they try and attack that bird, it's either 2 or 3 dodge with supports from Buccaneer. So yeah, pretty nice. Overall, that's pretty much it for the Warband in terms of fighters. No really unique abilities apart from swag counters. Light-fingered, sorry. But it's weird. They kind of work together. It's a weird mismatch of miniatures and rules. Because if you compare them to like other warbands, there's no theme, like no shared kind of shared inspirability, but they're all very different, which kind of represents, you know, they're pirates. So, but you know, that's pretty much okay. Now I'll go over the cards for the faction cards that come within this expansion. I'll go over what I think is okay to bad, and then go through my top picks. And then once I've done with the faction cards, I'll go over the universal cards. And obviously I'll go with objectives, gambits, and then upgrades. So for the faction objectives, Aspiring Tyrant is a hybrid that you score in an end phase if your leader is on a feature token in enemy territory or one or more enemy leaders are out of action. For 1 glory, it's okay, just quite difficult because your leader is movement free until they inspire. So you're going to have to invest in mobility cards to score the first part, because especially as getting into enemy territory on a feature token isn't easy. But, you know, it's okay. Next we have Bold Tails. Score this in the end phase if 3 or more friendly fighters are on feature tokens that are not in your territory, so enemy territory as well as no man's land, and 3 or more enemy fighters are out of action. For 2 glory, and if your fighters were more survivable, you know, it's just not really doable, especially until they're all inspired. So, because, you know, you're only movement 3, generally go to movement 4. So it does say on feature tokens, so you don't have to hold them, but it's still not good. I would not run it. You have Brutal Belaying, which is a surge. Score this immediately after a friendly fighter's range 1 or 2 attack action that took the target out of action if that fighter had 1 or more supporting fighters. If this warband had more supporting mechanics like you had with the Ossiarch Bone Reaper one, Canaan's Reapers, then sure. Otherwise, you're relying on the bird to kill stuff to score this. I would not run it. For Loaded with Booty, it's a jewel that you score in the end phase if you have 2 or more swag counters and 2 or more of your friendly fighters are on a feature token that is not in your territory. For 2 glory, it's okay, but too situational because not only do you have to hold on to 2 or more swag counters, but you need to be on feature tokens that are not in your territory, which is not really easy with, once again, when most of your fighters are 2 wounds with 1 to 2 dodge. Next we have Maneater, because I guess Blackpowder's a Maneater, which makes sense. Just doesn't have a hat. But it's a surge. Score this immediately after your leader's range 1 or 2 attack action that took an adjacent target out of action if that target had no wound counters during the declare attack action step. It's okay. The problem is, while your leader can score this, because it requires you to killing someone with no wound counters, the problem is there's a lot of 4 wound or more fighters rolling around at the moment. And spoilers, the deck has no way to get to 4 damage in close combat, so there's no +1 damage cards for the Maneater anyway. It's just not worth it. I guess in Championship it'd be slightly better, but still not really worth it personally. It's too matchup dependent. Smash and Grab is a hybrid. Scored in end phase if 1 or more of your opponent's upgrades was broken in the previous phase, or 1 or more enemy fighters who each have 2 or more upgrades are out of action for 1 glory. It's okay, but you're either relying on your opponent playing like illusion upgrades, or you to have killed 2 fighters who have already played upgrades. So this is really hard to score round 1 unless you're an illusion meta. Then you have Tall Tale. This is a hybrid. Score in the end phase if 1 or more enemy fighters with a wounds castic of 5 or more out of action, or 1 or more surviving friendly fighters each has 3 or more upgrades. For 1 glory, and you know, it's not a surge, just wouldn't run it. The second part is kind of too difficult, especially early on, and the first part is too situational. Now we go on to faction upgrades top picks. First up, we have Brash Braggart. Score an end phase if your leader's within 2 hexes of 2 or more enemy fighters. It's only 1 glory, but as you can kind of set this up as your last activation, it's pretty easy, you know. You can go within 2 hexes of 3 enemy fighters, kill 1, or even just move up to 2 and shoot 1, something like that. For 1 glory, it's fine. Broadside is score as a surge, which you score immediately after your leader's second or subsequent Grundabus attack action in the same phase. So, you know, if you've built the deck around him shooting a lot, it's fine, you know. It does need card support, or you get a lot of swag counters, but it's fine. Eyes on the Prize is score this in the end phase if you have 3 or more swag counters. When you score this objective card, if you have 6 or more swag counters, gain 1 additional glory point. So for 2 glory, if you're dead set on just holding on to swag counters, is actually pretty good for the first part. I think it's going to be pretty unrealistic to have 6 unless it's somehow the end of the game. But, you can score this in any turn. And if your deck's lucky enough, I think it could get 3 swag counters, because all you'd have to do is not use your swag counter turn 1, and then just get 2 during the power step or whatever. So for 2 glory, it's pretty good. Gold Diggers is a surge and duel. Score this immediately up after a power step if 2 or more friendly fighters are on a feature token, and 1 or more of those fighters are in enemy territory. So it's actually like Swift Capture, but reversed. So you can have one of your fighters staying on a feature token in your territory and do like charge with the bird onto another. It's actually pretty easy. And also you can, well, it has to be in enemy territory, but this is actually quite easy to set up and I like. It's a nice way to get going. Finally, you have Treasure Hungry. Score this in end phase if 2 or more friendly fighters are on feature tokens for 1 glory. Thankfully, this can be on any feature token, doesn't have to be on enemy territory. So, some nice 1 glory if you want to sit back for a turn and be more defensive, or just spread your, fighters out a bit. Now we move on to the faction Gambits. Hasty Shot, discard 1 power card. When you do, your leader makes 1 Grundabus attack action with -1 dice and ignores the ammo ability. It's restricted to your leader, but I wouldn't really discard a power card to make a shot with 2 Fury or 3 Fury if your leader is inspired. If you're desperate for scoring that objective where you shoot twice, it's fine. The cool thing is you can do this in the power step, but the gun isn't that great, so not recommended for me. Makeshift Munitions is in the next activation. Your leader's Grundabus attack action has -1 damage to a minimum of 1 and does not have the ammo ability, obviously restricted to your leader. Once again, it's okay if you're dead set on shooting the gun. The only problem is 3 Fury, 1 damage is just, you're literally only running it to score the objective. And I think you can just fit better cards in. Snack Break is choose 1 friendly fighter adjacent to your leader. That chosen fighter is taken out of action and you heal your leader 2. So you give your opponent 1 glory to heal 2. Just run healing potion. Now we go on to faction Gambit's top picks. First, we have Been There. This is a reaction. Play after an enemy fighter's charge action. Your leader makes 1 move action. After that move action, your leader must be adjacent to that enemy fighter. The reason I put in the good pile is because obviously it's a Gambit, so you can play this after your your leader has charged or moved, so you can do some nice setups, and he's quite tanky as well. And it's just some nice extra mobility, especially if you move him onto a feature token. Done That is a reaction. Played this after an adjacent fighter's failed attack action that targeted your leader. Gain 1 swag counter. It's not ideal because generally I think people would probably ignore your leader unless they could kill him. But if they do attack you, it's a nice way to gain a swag counter, especially in Rivals format. And yeah, restricted to your leader. Flurry of Claws is choose 1 friendly companion. That chosen fighter makes 1 of their attack actions on their fighter card. So the cool thing, this is an attack action in the power step, and even though it shows the bird, it can work on any companion. So pretty cool, especially if you charge someone, even if you don't kill them, you can attack again. And yeah, it's just a nice way to get extra attacks. Gold Rush, choose up to 2 friendly fighters other than your leader. Push each chosen fighter up to 2 hexes towards the feature token that is closest to the fighter and in enemy territory. So it's a nice mobility card, pretty good, and because it specifies an enemy territory, it's a nice way to gain some early advantage, even if one of the Noblars looks like he's naked. I know I can see the pants, but still. Grand Theft Auto is the first range 1 attack action made by a friendly fighter. The next activation has Ensnare, and then gain 1 swag counter after resolving that attack action. So you're playing it just for swag generation, swag forever, swag for life. But it's nice, just auto swag. Swag on your opponent. Punitive Damage, reaction. Play this after an enemy fighter's attack action that targeted an adjacent friendly fighter other than your leader. Deal 1 damage to the attacker. So generally, your fighters are going to die, but you can play this even if they die or live. So it's a nice way to spread some damage around for another fighter to kill them or, your leader. So pretty good. Reckless Raid is +1 dice to friendly fighters' range 1 actions and -1 defense to a minimum of 1. And it persists until the end of the round. Now this works on all your fighters, and it can work on even if you give them attack action upgrades. So not too great on your leader unless you upgrade him. But most of your fighters have range 1. It does make the Noblars better at the cost of survivability for your other 2 fighters, but because it stacks with attack action upgrades, you can do some really nice plays with it, and it opens a lot of potential for people playing like Championship. In Rivals, not so great, but yeah, in other formats is pretty good. Now we go on to the faction upgrades. First, we have Legendary Looter. This is an action, so choose one friendly fighter and discard one swag counter. When you do, give the chosen fighter one upgrade without spending, then give this fighter one charge token. Restricted to Blackpowder or a minion. Really don't understand this. I mean, the problem with Legendary Looter is that it gives them a charge token. You know, you're already going -1 in terms of card advantage by, yeah, you're playing an upgrade for free, but you're doing it as an action, and then it's a swag counter. It's another way to use swag, but giving the charge token completely kills it. Don't think it was necessary, especially as an action. Liberated map. So if this fighter is on an edge hex and has no move tokens, place this fighter in an empty edge hex and give this fighter one move token. At the end of the action phase, if this fighter is on a feature token that is not in your territory, gain one swag counter and this fighter is inspired. So the action is okay. It's not great. The problem is because you can't really place feature tokens on edge hexes anymore due to crazy changes which don't make sense in Harrowdeep. So it's not going to gel with the second part, but the second part is always active. So if you just move this fighter onto a feature token that's not in your territory, so no man's land or enemy territory, it's inspired. It's restricted to your minions. It's just, the problem is that's the Noblars, so I wouldn't really run this. It's just not that good. More power is a weird reaction. Use this after a power step. When you do, in the next activation, this fighter's Grunderblast attack action has +1 range and -1 dice to a minimum of 1. It's restricted to your leader. The problem is it's -1 dice. The funny thing is, because they've oddly left no clarification in the, reaction step, so you can do it going into your opponent's activation, you can kind of use this to shut down reactions, I believe. But it's just a niche use. It's not really a good card. I wouldn't run it. Next, you have More Shot. Reaction, use this after your fighter's Grunderblast attack action. When you do the following twice. Scatter 1 from the target's hex, then deal 1 damage to any fighter in the end hex that has not already been dealt damage by this reaction. It's restricted to your leader. It's effectively like a piercing shot. It relies on the bad scatter mechanic. So unless for some reason you're playing against a heavily bunched up warband, so situational, just don't run it. Pointy bits. If this fighter is a minion, its range 1 attack actions have Grievous. If this fighter is Blackpowder, he has the following reaction. Reaction, use this during this fighter's Grunderblast attack action. After the declare attack action step, this attack action has Cleave and -1 dice to a minimum of 1. So it can work on his gun and also his sword, but it's not good. -1 dice is not great for just Cleave, so don't run it. Then you have Scavenge Shot. While this fighter is on a feature token that is not in your territory, you can ignore the ammo ability of this fighter's Grunderblast attack action. After this fighter makes a Grunderblast attack action, if you ignore the ammo ability, deal 1 damage to this fighter. The gun is okay, but it's not really worth taking 1 damage unless you've also built the deck to heal. It's just, it's too situational. Like if you are obsessed with maximizing the gun and have a way to continually heal yourself, it's okay. Next is Tiny Braggart. It's an illusion upgrade, so you can equip it for free, but then it's, has its own way to be destroyed. +1 damage to this fighter's range 1 attack actions, +1 move, +1 defense. Really good until you find out it's limited to pegs. So, no, unfortunately. Now, we finally have some top picks for the faction upgrades. First, we have Cash Compass. This is a reaction. After this fighter's activation, push this fighter up to 2 hexes towards the nearest feature token. At the end of the action phase, if this fighter is on a feature token that is not in your territory, gain 1 swag counter and inspire this fighter. It's restricted to your minions, so your Noblars. This is actually pretty cool because you can do it going into your last activation. It's extra mobility and you're always going to get that second paragraph. It's actually pretty good. Thieving Grapple, partly because I'm trying to look for good upgrades, but a reaction after this fighter's move action, if you move through 1 or more enemy fighters, during that action, roll 1 attack dice on a roll of a smash, pick 1 upgrade given to one of those enemy fighters and break that card, then gain 1 swag counter and this fighter is inspired. It's restricted to KG, but As I said, I'm looking for good upgrades, and in Rivals, I guess this would be good. Plus, you know, when you move, the problem is you don't roll a dice for each enemy fighter you move through. But if you roll through multiple, you can target multiple. It's nice, you know, objective upgrade removal, and you can inspire. Well, you gain because you gain a swag counter. Trogoth Grease just puts this fighter on guard, restricted to Mange and your minions. Really good on Mange, but just being on guard in general is pretty good, especially when your fighters can have 2 defense when inspired for the Noblars and 3 defense inspired for your Monkey, who does 2 defense base. So it's not bad, pretty good. Well, that was the faction cards. Now we'll go on to the universal cards that come with this expansion. As an interesting note, I probably should have said this earlier, but the nice thing GW have done is they've shown what cards come in the decks effectively. So if you can see this, so like it lists the cards that come on. Well, that's the rival deck, and then yeah, we'll go into the universal deck. Before they were 28 cards, now they're 32 cards, so 4 more cards. But yeah, once again, I'll go through objectives, gambits, and upgrades. So first up, we have objectives. For objectives, we have Find a Path. So Find a Path is a hybrid. Scores an end phase of 2 or more friendly fighters or on edge hexes that are not in your territory, or 1 or more friendly hunters are on edge hexes in enemy territory. 2 situational, not that great. Generous Blessings is a hybrid. Scores an end phase. It's also for chaos only. It's a Grand Alliance card. 1 or more friendly fighters have 3 or more upgrades, or they're 1 or more surviving friendly fighters. Well, Nurgle fighters and enemy fighters have 3 or more wound counters. So I guess it's pretty good Wormspat support. Shame they're not being sold anymore. Indifferent End is score this immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action that takes an enemy fighter out of action if that enemy had 1 or more illusion upgrades at the start of the attack action. It's just too situational. Maybe better in Rivals, but, you know, only if everyone's playing Harrowdeep. Otherwise, it's not that great. Last Stand was a terrible X-Men movie. Is a duel. Score this in an end phase if each friendly fighter is adjacent to 1 or more friendly fighters, and each friendly fighter is within 2 hexes of 1 or more enemy fighters. It is 2 glory, but it requires everyone being bunched up and also near the enemy. So, you know, it's okay, but because every friendly fighter has to be within 2 hexes of enemy fighters, it's just too situational. I guess good for elite fast aggro warbands like Ripper Snarlfangs, but wouldn't really run this. You have Ordered Reality, which is an order card. Hybrid scores an end phase if 1 or more of your opponent's illusion upgrades were broken in the preceding phase, or each surviving friendly fight has the same number of upgrades. Oddly, they say 0 is a number. I know some people who are going to love and abuse this clarification, but there we have it. It's 1 glory. Run if everyone's playing illusions, otherwise it's not that great. Then we have Path of Destruction, which is a Destruction Grand Alliance card. It's a duel. Score this in the end phase if there are more enemy fighters out of action than surviving enemy fighters, but also that you have more enemy fighters out of action than there are friendly fighters out of action for 2 glory. So I can kind of see this for elite aggro warbands. Once again, Ripper Snarlfangs. Probably even Morgoth's Crushers. Morgoth's Crushers actually, yeah. And Headcracker's Mad Mob. But it's kind of doubling down on killing. I guess it works. It's just okay. Now we go to Universal Upgrades top picks. First, we have Going In for the Kill. This is the duel. Score in the end phase if each surviving fighter is in enemy territory and there are more surviving friendly fighters than surviving enemy fighters. For 2 glory, this is really good for aggro warbands just pushing into enemy territory and boxing them in. So once again, as all the aggro warbands I've said before, it's really good for aggro, you know, just doubling down on getting in there. Let Shadows Lie is score this in the end phase if each surviving friendly fighter is 2 or more hexes from the nearest cover hex, blocked hex, and lethal hex for 1 glory. 1 glory, but it's good for control builds. People are just sitting back. Even aggro can kind of score this, as long as they're an elite warband. So yeah, it's nice, stable glory. Make a Path is a dual objective. Score this if your leader has 1 or more charged tokens and is in enemy territory, and 1 or more enemy fighters are out of action for 1 glory. Once again, just good for aggro warbands who are just getting stuck in. nothing bad there. Now we have the Path of Death, which is a Death Grand Alliance card. Score this in the end phase if 2 or more enemy fighters are out of action and there are no enemy fighters in your territory or no one's territory. So they kind of have to be in their own territory. It's for 3 glory, can be scored in any end phase. Pretty good for warbands like the Grimwatch, who are trying to box people out. But, for aggressive death warbands, pretty nice. And it, gives another aggro reason for playing death. Really good. Now we go on to the Universal Gambits. First, we have Illusory Maze, which is a trap. Reaction: after an enemy fighter's move action, if that fighter has 1 or more illusion upgrades, give that fighter 1 charge token, otherwise stagger that fighter. It's okay, not that good. Shadow Balm, heal 1, just run healing potion. Spiraling Confusion: choose fighters that are adjacent, 1 friendly and 1 enemy fighter that are adjacent to each other, and scatter 1 each away from each other. And, they have to be able to physically do the push. Just a reverse confusion, but not as good. Now you have Land Grab, which is a maneuver card. Push up to 2 friendly fighters up to 2 hexes. After each push, that fighter must be in no one's territory. So originally I rated this quite good, but then I realized being limited to no one's territory is really limiting. It's great early on if you can get to enemy territory, but it's an order card, just not that good. It's very restrictive the more you think about it and try to use it. Victory's Reward is a chaos card. Play this after a friendly fighter's range 1 or 2 attack action that takes a target out of action. Heal to that fighter or give that fighter 1 guard token. If it's a corn fighter, pick both, but I would just say don't pick this card at all. It's just not that good. Playful Shake is a destruction card. Reaction: after this friendly fighter's beast range 1 attack action, if it is adjacent to the target, 1 damage to the target, then push the target 1 hex. Very situational, wouldn't really rate taking. Now we go into Universal Gambit's top picks. So first we have Flitting Shadow. Choose 1 friendly fighter, push that chosen fighter up to 1 hex towards the nearest enemy fighter, then give the chosen fighter 1 guard token if it is a companion. Either way, you're getting some nice extra mobility, even though it's a limited sidestep, but if you're a companion, you also get guard. So very good for the Harrowdeep warbands. Grievous Gaia is a reaction. Play this after friendly fighter's range 1 or 2 attack action. Scatter 4 hex from that fighter's location and push them up to 3 hexes along the chain. If it's interrupted or blocked, it stops. But there's some nice mobility. Generally, it's going to be a very random move, but because you can terminate the chain, say you're trying to get onto a feature token, if that feature token is next to an enemy fighter or blocked hex, you can kind of use this to push on cannily. So I like this because of the mobility. Halls of Hidden Eyes is a waypoint. Rolls of successes and full successes are successes in attack rolls if the target is in a cover hex. It persists until another waypoint is played. So, if someone's hiding in a cover hex, this is actually some nice way to get some more accuracy. Unlikely Hero is choose 1 friendly fighter and they gain +1 move, +1 wounds if they have a wounds characteristic of 2 or less, and +1 damage to the range 1 or 2 attack actions if they're a minion, and persists until the next power step. While the minion step stuff only really works for Harrowdeep warbands, the +1 move and wounds is actually pretty good on other warbands like, Canaan's Reapers, especially if you play it defensively to get +1 wound, because you can kind of stall out your opponent, but the +1 move and wound is nice. And then a really broken card is Plunder the Graves. So it's a Grand Alliance death card. Shuffle your power discard pile face down, then draw the top card, return that card to your hand. So my problem with this was it's a version of a Grimwatch faction card where they can effectively do the same for faction cards, and it allows recycling. But it's so easy because if you have 1 card in your discard pile, you just go, I'll play this, immediately take that card back and play it again. So, it's worse the later the game goes on. But also you can return upgrades and gambits. And because of the change to the do-over, it's really easy to manipulate this. So great for death. I'm sure they needed another power boost. Now we go on to the universal upgrades. First up, we have Adept Smoke. You cannot give this card to a leader. This fighter is an assassin. Assassin is just a keyword. After an enemy fighter's activation, if that fighter is adjacent to this fighter, place this fighter on a cover hex in your territory, then give this fighter 1 charge token and break this card. It's okay, but you're kind of relying on this fighter surviving the adjacent enemy fighter's attack. It's okay. Some nice defensive teleporting, but it's too situational for my liking. Keen Senses. This fighter is a hunter and its attack action Seb Grievous, which is great until you realize it's restricted to companions, so it's just not great at all. Staff of Ciphers is a range 1 free smash 1 damage attack action. After this attack action was successful, as a reaction, draw up to 1 power card. It's okay. If it was range 2, it'd probably be broken, but it's just fine. Vital Spear is a death card. It's an attack action upgrade. You become a hunter. Range 2, 2 fury, 2 damage. After the attack action, if after the deal damage step, heal this fighter 1. Heal 1 friendly fighter within 3 instead of if the target has been dealt damage that kills them. It's because it's 2 fury, it's just rubbish. Just don't run this. It's weird healing. Not that great. Now we go on to Universal Upgrades top picks. First we have Bound Bolt. It's a bound spell. You cannot give this card to a Khorne fighter. It's a spell action on a single channel. If cast, deal 1 damage to 1 enemy fighter within 3 hexes of the caster. The fighter is a level 1 wizard while attempting to cast this spell and cannot attempt to cast any other spells. After this fighter makes his attack action, break this card. It's actually really good magic support, especially like I can see Wormspat running this as well because you can put this on any fighter. But yeah, this is just really nice magical support, and yeah, it's really good. Darkening Stone is a Metallith. You cannot give this card to a leader. This fighter is an assassin. This fighter is considered to be in a cover hex. So, you know, you can't give it to a leader, but it's really great on fighters with more than 1 defense because you can just give this to them and, you know, the count has been supported. Really cool. Well, you know, they count full successes as a success, but it's a nice way to boost their survivability. Encrusted Key is a cursed key. If this fighter is in a cover hex at the end of the 3rd action phase, or end of the game, gain 1 glory point. You know, it's just like another key. I like this. It's a bit slow, but still just good. Shadowkeeper is a Denzine upgrade. This fighter is on guard and reaction after an enemy fighter's failed attack action. If this fighter was a target and was adjacent and there was 1 or more crits in the defense roll, deal 1 damage to the attacker. Considering you can kind of play around this by being outside of range 1, unless your opponent gets in, that downside isn't that bad, especially if you've got 2 defense dice. Even on 3, you still only have about a 30% chance to roll a crit. 30.6. Let me just double check. So it's 42.1% chance on 3 dice. Even then, you know, putting this on a 3 or 2 defense to fighter, it's pretty good because you just have constant guard. Really, really good. They kind of just should have said in any defense roll instead of just adjacent. Then you have Shared Glory. When a friendly fighter's attack action takes an enemy fighter out of action, if this equipped fighter was a supporting fighter, gain 1 spent glory point. Really good. It's only order, but there's a lot of ways to work around this. Pretty good. Really like this. You have Gifted Speed, which is a mutation for Chaos, +1 move. And if you take an enemy fighter out of action, you can give this for free. You know, it's a restriction. It's a reprint of a Beastgrave Universal card, but it's nice. Nice way to get +1 speed for free. Then you have Wrecker's Scorn, which is a destruction card. After you flip a feature token this fighter is on, you can remove that feature token, then break this card. So just nice objective removal. Even though it's not too important at the moment, it's just nice to have. So it's a really useful card. So yeah, Blackpowders Buccaneers are an interesting warband. Definitely not that strong. You can feel that from the cards. Almost as if it kind of is a joke, but in terms of like, you know, you're just having fun playing as a pirate. So if you're playing casually, you'll have a laugh. You can get lots of swag counters and pretend to be a pirate. Competitively, doesn't feel that viable, which is good. I'm not a fan of, you know, the big monster warbands where you've got a big monster and then the minions are just too good in terms of supporting them, which you kind of saw with Kanan's Reapers and Hrothgorn's Man-Trappers, and definitely Mollog. So you can see it's very, very toned down. but it's just kind of a meme warband almost. So there's probably some tricks you can get out of there. Like, can see a build where you're just spamming the gun, but honestly, they don't seem that great. Seem quite weak, especially compared to the Diachasm warbands. Whereas the Beastgrave ones were too strong. The Diachasm ones are good, but pretty balanced. This warband is just, it's okay. I'm not a fan of the looks, as I said. The pirate not having a pirate hat, just kind of looking bland. But the Nobblars are cool. Also, you just have a monkey. But it's an okay warband. You've got some nice universal cards, like that Broken Death Grand Alliance card, which is just, at this point, really confusing by how much the designers love death. Like, as in terms of the Grand Alliance. They got so many good cards in general. This is just another good card. So if you're a competitive player, you're going to be really happy that you've bought this for probably one card. But that's Warhammer Underworlds. For the pros and cons, the pros, I do like how the warband represents it's a pirate team, because, you know, it's very mishmashed. They're not really working together. The only thing they have in common is they're all after loot, and they're kind of scared the big bad boss. You know, that's pretty cool. As I said, I really like the look of the Nobblars. The swag mechanic is okay. Counter generation. It's not too annoying, like you had with Diachasm stuff, but it's fine. And also you get to like make tons of swag jokes and do like swag signs, which would be very cringe, but you know, gotta swag it out, you know. I don't have my shades. You're lucky this time I don't have my shades nearby. And then yeah, it just looks like a fun warband to play. As in, you know, you'll just have fun playing them. You may not win, but you can have fun being a pirate. It's pretty cool. For the warband cons, while what makes sense, they don't really work together well as a team. They kind of do suffer from that in terms of synergy. The other big problem is you've got 4 fighters with 2 wounds that generally have 1 defense or 2. Inspiring requires them to have a successful attack, and a lot of the themes of the warband is being in enemy territory and specifically on enemy feature tokens. Now, some of the cards specify no man's land as well, because as long as it's not your territory, but it's just with their limited mobility of generally movement free outside of the bird until they inspire, they kind of struggle at what they want to do. I think too much attention has been put on the gun, where, like, you know, the gun is okay, and you may go like, oh, John, the gun's ridiculous. And you go like, on paper, you know, range free, free fury, 2 damage. Not going to say it's bad. It's pretty good. But Hrothgorn has that, you know, 2 fury going to 3 when inspired with the same effect and can pull you in, and doesn't have to invest counters to use. And then I'd also go at like point towards that Order warband, the Stormcast one with all the Thunderhead crossbows. Like, if they could fire continually, they wouldn't be broken either. Because he's kind of limited in what he does in terms of like the Blackpowder. And then, yeah, a lot of the faction cards are pretty bad. I think the upgrades are some of the worst I've seen, partly because they go too heavy into the gun mechanic. And then, yeah, if you haven't, like, the swag mechanic is effectively dead unless you invest into the fighter cards, because you're relying on your minions to run in and kill stuff. Well, to successfully attack and get swag counters for your leader to then fire the swag counters. And swag counters are just used in a limited way. I would have liked to see some more, you know, interesting ways to use swag counters outside of just firing the gun and maybe like equipping an upgrade for free. It just seems kind of like it was tacked on a bit, but it's not bad. As I said, I'm really glad that the warband isn't broken. But overall, yeah, it's a weird warband. It's like, you're kind of, yeah, if you're a competitive player, you're kind of going, it's not that great. And I am in that boat because I would get where they're coming from. But also, I'm glad this warband isn't like broken. It's just okay. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. It's just feels like they're going for the memes again with the monkey. I know some people are gonna try and go crazy with the monkey, but it just kind of makes Warhammer Underworld more memorable for the memes than actually as a game. But that's digressing. I haven't talked about the cost because I won't know the cost at the time of recording. So, was it Warband's are £27.50 at the moment? So, if it goes up to 30 for 4 extra cards, I'll go okay. If it goes up by £5 to £32.50 for 4 cards, I'll go like, it's not good value. But I've left that out because I don't know with pricing, and people get very upset either for or against pricing. So left it out of pros and cons. But yeah, it's just a fun warband. Can see why they didn't really talk about it for 2 months. Kind of know a bit of the backstory with the warband, but it's fine. Yeah, it's okay. As I said, if you like playing as a pirate, it'll be fine. Really disappointing, I forgot to add that he doesn't have a pirate hat. I should have added that into the cons. Like, come on, where's the hat? Eye patch, something. He's like a really lazy cosplaying pirate. Anyway, that's pretty much it. So yeah, if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment as what you thought of the video. Do you agree with my thoughts on the warband? And what do you think about the game at the moment for Warhammer Underworlds? And would you even like to see me talk about Warhammer Underworlds more? It's just Harrowdeep is kind of just okay. Like, it's not bad. Nothing's really broken apart from 1 death card. It's just fine. Yeah, nothing to complain about, but nothing to go like really praise. It's just okay. And sometimes being okay is just good. Because it's much better than having something that would have been really broken, like previous Beastgrave Warbands. Like if they released another Morgoth's Crushers or another, like, what do you call him? Mollog. You know, something like that, or even Grimwatch. It's just fine. And if you're playing casually in Rivals format, it's probably a good warband to pick up. Oh, if I would buy it, probably not. Just mainly because, not because of the rules, more because of the looks. If it was more of a pirate, like the classic man-eater model, probably would have picked it up. Like, if it feels like they didn't want to go full into the pirate theme, like design-wise. But it's just okay. It doesn't really appeal to how I play the game. But it's fine, yeah. But that's pretty much it. So until next time for Warhammer Underworlds, where we're trying to battle off the Necromancer and his zombies, watch out for the roving Buccaneer, because he'll always swag on you unless you can roll a crit.